We made it.
That's right.
The recording is working.
I know. There we go. We got our first blooper. Brought to you by Infineon. Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joire, and today is Thursday, September 12th, 2024. And I've got the excellent Ray of Infineon. We've talked with Ray before. Hi, Ray. How are you?
I'm doing very well, Miriam. How are you?
I'm great. And, it's great to have you back on the show because I want to talk with you about 48 volt architecture. I know it sounds really nerdy, but this really matters because it's going to enable a whole new level of electric mobility for, EVs. And Infineon is a leader in this area, right? So where do we start? Like, if you wanted to meet somebody and say, hey, let's talk about 48 volt, where would you start?
Wow, there's so many places where we can start. I'd almost, and I said this to you earlier, you almost need to start a little bit at the beginning. A lot of people don't realize that, 25 years ago, there was a 42 volt consortia that was trying to bring that into automotive. And quite frankly, the physics hasn't changed. Thank God that's, physics is still working. But the
Yes.
reality is that at these higher voltages, you can reduce the current in these systems, theoretically by a factor of 4.
Yeah.
And when you take a look at a car, and a lot of people don't realize this, a modern day car has got over a mile of wiring in it. All of that current has got to make it through all of that wiring.
That's a lot of weight.
That's a lot of weight. It's money. Copper is not cheap. If you take a look, some big EV guys have even used aluminum wire because the connectivity is better for those super high currents, but aluminum is a little bit more difficult to process in a harness in automotive. Now they're able to go back to copper, right? By going 48 volt, they can reduce current. So I think that you're seeing the fact that the physics part of it is there. There's definitely cost, weight, CO2 reductions, everything that you really want to hear about.
Plus resistance, right? The lower the voltage, you're going to heat up these conductors more if you put more current, through them. So higher voltage means less current, and all of a sudden
Absolutely.
you've got,
you get
so
much
your efficiency, right, as well. And that matters especially for EVs.
The EVs are the efficiency that turns into range. For an ICE vehicle, that turns into CO2 reductions, right? So these things all, matter actually quite a bit. And I think some of the tipping points, right, that have occurred, right, why didn't 42 volt make it? Well, there is a cost, an initial cost. A lot of these systems, whether it's, loads, lighting, lamps, motors, solenoids, they all have to be retooled to work in a 48 volt system. And,
Right.
25 years ago, that was a big cost. And I think a lot of OEMs looked at that and said, yeah, I might be able to save money 5 years from now, but it's not going to help me to save money immediately. But I think you've got two big things that have occurred. One is, quite frankly, with these higher end vehicles coming down the road. And certainly Cybertruck is one of those, right? Not just the size, the loads that it has in there, but also the computing power of these vehicles, right? These computing centers take up a lot of current.
Yeah.
At 12 volts, you're talking maybe 100 amps.
And infotainment systems too, right? Like more amplifiers, more speakers to drive. Now,
more
amplifiers
displays.
have got, more displays. Amplifiers have got more efficient with Class D a few years back, but it's still, they keep adding. They keep adding, especially in luxury cars. And you've got motors for the seats and for like the screens that come down from the rear seat and like all these fancy features, right? And not to mention, luxury cars and sports cars generally get things like active suspension sooner, systems that require motors with a lot more current. And so all of this kind of feeds into what you're saying.
Right. You take a look at a heavy vehicle and you have, power steering is a big current. You need a lot of current to be able to turn a heavy vehicle in a parking situation, right? Because you've got full torque that you need there. And again, these systems take a lot of current at 12 volts. 12 volt systems just kind of run out of juice. So I think that's one thing that's tipped it. People are looking at it more, right? And then the other thing is that in a pure electric vehicle, you already have the infrastructure of a DC to DC. You already have a high voltage battery. Now you're going down to 12 volts, right? Now, now you can bring 48 volt in. You already have, like I said, all the DC to DC and all those other topics going on. So I think infrastructure-wise, it's a little bit easier implementation on a battery electric vehicle, right? So that's another, let's call it something that has reduced like this barrier of entry, if you will.
And so the barrier is obviously amongst not just the OEMs, but the suppliers, right? And in fact, I think it's been really interesting with the Cybertruck because, Elon sent out this memo to, the folks at Ford saying this is how you make a 48 volt EV or vehicle. And I think it's interesting because they got their suppliers to somehow go on board, which is really interesting too, because they're still not the biggest player in the world when it comes to working with suppliers. You'd think a company like Mercedes would be able to switch their suppliers over much faster for a specific model, at least. So I think it's all really interesting because it ties into there's so much more than the EE stuff, than the electrical engineering aspects, right? And as you said, like the DC to DC conversion is an area where Infineon is a leader, right? Power systems is an area that you master at Infineon. And I think the other thing too is for those who are wondering, like it wasn't just like more compute, more luxury features, more infotainment, more screens, more amps, more active suspension, active sway bars, all that stuff, and power steering. It's also mild hybridization on the gas side that initially I think drove some of the 48 volts. Correct?
That was our initial real. I mean, after 42 volt kind of died off, right? And probably some of your listeners don't even know that. They can go. I'm sure they can Google it. And
when
see
was
MIT.
that? Like, how early did they look into making?
I mean, this is like the late 90s, right?
Okay.
You can go. MIT was involved in the consortia as well.
Why 42? It's not a multiple of 12. You'd think 48 makes so much more sense, or 36 or something,
Right, exactly. I mean, I think they were trying to stay away from the voltage that can harm you, and there was a lot more discussion about the variances, right? Because the 12 volt system has a very high variance. So, when you start to push 60 volts, that's when, you have to be careful about harming and isolation and shielding and all those other things. So, but even that was back in the day for me too, Miriam.
Okay.
I'm, not been around super long time. But having said all that, I think that, you take a look at what people were doing then. Some people did. We as Infineon, we developed a higher voltage technology to be able to run on that stuff. So we had some of that stuff still available, and we offer that to people now. But clearly, the industry needs to invest more in new high voltage, or let's call it medium voltage technologies, to really make these 48 volt systems more optimized in the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years to bring that apart. But to your point, our first major entry was the micro mild hybridization that occurred, where a lot of this starter generator,
the
and
start-stop systems and
start-stop systems,
mild hybrids,
mild hybrids, and then some of those super high current systems, like you said, like active suspension on luxury vehicles. So we did develop gate drivers, MOSFETs to handle those large motors back in those days. But if you take a look now, what people are doing or thinking about doing, it's a much larger conversion. They want to convert, window lift. They want to convert blower motors. They want to convert, coolant fans and pumps and seats and all sorts of systems that, historically have not been really looked at.
I mean, as you said, efficiency in EVs is critical. So if let's focus on EVs, because obviously, 48 volts is going to happen no matter what, and it's probably going to be available in some hybrid and plug-in hybrid vehicles and to some extent. But what we're talking about here is a full implementation of 48 volts. So basically, you may be an accessory port in your car, like you have USB ports that are running at different voltage, like 12 typically. Like the cigarette lighter is going to stick around, hopefully, because it's very handy to have. But I can imagine like the Cybertruck being an example of that you have, your high voltage battery pack and an entire 48 volt system. As you said, window regulators, windshield wipers, everything, fan motors, actuators, solenoids, whatever, everything, sensors, everything's 48 volt. And I believe the Cybertruck still has a bunch of 12 volt stuff. What's interesting is they don't have a 48 volt low voltage battery. They have a 12 volt for low voltage battery, I think, which is, I can't remember how I read up on this, but I can't remember exactly how it's implemented. Did you have any insight on that?
They may have gotten rid of the 12 volt battery on Cybertruck, or at least, and that's actually something that I guess we need to take a closer look at. But I think that's one of the benefits of is getting rid of a 12 volt battery. They had to, though, add 40 to 12 volt DC to DC converters.
Well, of course.
Because by getting rid of the 12 volt battery, you've got to add the converters. Now, there's money in those. You get rid of the battery, so you have the converters. So ultimately, right, you want to try to get, the more you can convert from 12 to 48 volt, the more you can get rid of those 40 to 12 volt DC to DC converters, right? And those are not cheap, because of the, these are potentially 5 to 100 watts to 1,000 watts.
Yeah, for sure. I think it's interesting though, because, you have different ways of doing this. You can start with a high voltage pack and then DC convert to 48 and then DC convert to 12 for those accessories that need it. And in fact, there is microscopic systems already in there. Like, if you have a USB port in your car, traditionally if it's an A port and it's a dumb 1 amp, 1.5 amp port, it's just going to be, 5 volts, right? And
5 volts,
and
yeah.
so you have a little, there's a little off-the-shelf chips that even maybe Infineon makes that
Yes,
do
we do.
this, right? 12 to 5 for USB. But today, this is not the case. Today, most modern new cars have USB Type-C or maybe a combination Type A and Type-C. And the Type-C they provide is generally a high power Type-C port. So it can charge laptops at 100 watt or 65 watt. And so, again, there are chips that exist out there that will take the 12 volt input and scale it up to 20 volts or whatever. But now if you start with 48 volt, you can actually have less losses, right? So I think even at that level, it's everything is, you add up all this efficiency, you add up all this weight savings from having, the smaller cables because you have less currents running through them, 48 volt. You add the cost saving of these smaller cables,
Right.
and yes, you have an initial cost of having the suppliers retool everything and create new, window motors and whatever. But you also have the cost of maybe creating a new chip that does USB PD, power delivery from 48 volt instead of from a traditional 12 volt or even maybe a 5 volt source, right? And so I think once you have those, though, they become a part of the Infineon collection of parts, basically, that a supplier and OEM can use, and you have a much more efficient EV because all that phantom drain adds up, even if it's the phantom drain when it's just sitting there. But even when you're driving around, right? Like, the more efficient all your systems are and all those conversions are, the better. And so, even Tesla, before they went to 48 volt, they were using lithium 12 volt batteries. Like, they were lighter and smaller and more expensive initially, but once they got them in mass production, it actually kind of evened out, right? And in an EV, that kind of makes sense because generally the 12 volt system, it's typically a lead acid, which adds a lot of weight. And it's also, they don't last, right? They don't last more than they do in combustion
No,
cars.
I mean, a lead acid battery is great for cranking an engine, but it's not as good as lithium is in these other use cases, right? So
do you see a future where the 48 system, there's no more secondary battery? We go from high voltage and the entire car is powered by, there's a safeguard system or something in there?
Well, I think a 48 volt battery still makes sense because of, especially when you start taking a look at, L3, L4, these automated systems that need to survive a certain drive cycle if the high voltage battery, goes down, or at least partly goes down, or the 48 volt system goes down. There's some level of redundancy that you're going to need to make sure braking and things like that will work to bring the vehicle to a safe stop, let's say.
Right.
You can't avoid that. So I think from that perspective, I mean, I do think 12 volt battery, that's certainly on the target to be eliminated. And I think, semiconductor companies like ourselves need to be looking at investing more into this field. I mean, one thing we talk about, harness being cheaper, connectors get cheaper, right? PCB traces get smaller, they get cheaper.
Oh, yeah, you're right. It really does, it's like a snowball effect, right?
It is exactly like a snowball effect. And the thing that I don't like to talk about that much is that even our semiconductor devices get cheaper, because the reality is that if you can reduce the current by a factor of 4, then our
That's
power
a good
stages
point.
our power stages can get smaller. Now, before you cut the clip here and leave that last thought, what I would say is this: higher voltage is more money, right? Everybody knows that. So to go to higher voltage costs more, but if you can go to higher voltage and reduce the current, you can offset that increase of higher voltage with lower operating currents. And I think
Right.
we're seeing that with some trends out there, that on the power semiconductor side, you have the potential to save money in certain situations. And I think that is part of the equation. And I think that's, I mean, I'm personally very bullish about 48 volts because I believe in the physics, and I believe that the tipping point has occurred enough between BEVs and between higher end vehicles running out of power in 12-volt systems. Those two things are going to create a big enough market, right, that will drive, guys to make 48-volt motors, right? People to
Right.
make 48-volt, window lifts and wipers and all these things, right? Now,
That makes sense.
it may take some people think, oh, it's going to be 10 years. I don't know. I feel like it'll be sooner than that, but I do think there's a lot of things coming together that's putting a little bit of wind behind this event of 48 volts for sure.
I kind of think of 48 volts as an opportunity actually to drag the industry into the new direction. Like, it's not just electrification, but I think more and more OEMs are in the position where they're like, yes, they need to continue making hybrids and gas hybrid, really. I think pure gas is going to go away very quickly, and maybe some plug-in hybrids. But then they have EVs, and the innovation is happening in EVs, and it's kind of filtering down to this legacy that we're eventually going to fade away, right? The gas hybrid, right? So I think I think we're going to see kind of like this overlap of the old world and the new world. Kind of one phasing
I've
out
said
as
that
the other.
exact same thing: the old world and the new world. Okay,
As one phases out, the other one is phasing in, and I think that in that sense, yes, I think the EV is a poster child for a pure 48 volt architecture, and I think Infineon is obviously in a good place there. What areas is Infineon playing here in? Because obviously probably a ton, but give us a rough idea of what kind of components you supply to OEMs and suppliers.
Right. I mean, we pretty much supply everything, right? We're a leader in microcontrollers, power semiconductors, wireless, Bluetooth, right? Memory chips, USB charging, you mentioned it. Smart power is one of our biggest technologies outside of just pure power semiconductors. When I look at 48 volt, things like LED lighting is another good one, right? We're very successful in that space. All of those loads have to be driven by motor drivers, gate drivers, MOSFETs. We have all that. We're a leader in all those fields. I think you're going to see GaN now start to emerge in these DC to DC converters as well. People are looking at GaN and onboard chargers and other applications, but a 48 to 12 volt DC to DC converter, I think you'll also start to see GaN emerge. We have made an acquisition in a GaN company and are investing heavily in there. So you're going to see us playing in the GaN space as well. So
I mean,
I'm
yeah, that makes sense. I mean, this is definitely one of the things that's been very strong. In again, we talked about USB-C earlier. Well, that's an area where it's obviously happening. So yeah, I think this is exciting. I'm really excited to see how this is developing, because it as an engineer, you're probably feeling the same. It's like this is like a whole new chapter, and it's really making a huge difference, and no matter what, it's going to improve our cars. And it doesn't mean that you have to throw all your 12 volt accessories away. I think that's the takeaway for the audience, right? It's like this is not changing too much about your experience with the cars, other than making them better, more efficient, and just easier to manufacture, more affordable for you. Hopefully the costs get passed on to us, right?
Yeah. I mean, 48 volt, because of the lower energy and the lower currents and less power dissipation, you can start to integrate more into a single ECU. So
right. Or that's also happening because of the software defined vehicle approach, right? Like you create the software and then you make the hardware around that. So yes.
But this is going to allow more integration, because one of the challenges in a software defined vehicle right now with that integration is thermal management. And this is going to alleviate some of that thermal management constraint. So it's an enabler on multiple levels. I think it's a great lever for an OEM, but it's also a challenge too for some of the legacy folks.
Well, yeah, and I think hopefully they can meet that challenge. And I think we have to give Tesla some credit here for meeting the challenge with the Cybertruck. As much as it's not my favorite vehicle at all, I think the technology behind it is really interesting, and I think that we're going to see more of that happening, and Infineon is going to be driving it. So awesome stuff. Well, thanks so much, Ray, for your time. I really appreciate it. It's been great chatting with you as always.
It has been a great conversation as usual, Miriam. Take care. All right. Thanks a lot.
Absolutely. Thanks again, Ray. And we're back, folks, with the lovely Marton Tech Altar. Hi, Marton. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me, Miriam. It's I think you were probably the first tech reviewer / I don't know if I can call you a YouTuber, but somebody who made videos on YouTube that I watched back in the Engadget days, like
really?
Lumia reviews and
oh my goodness,
stuff like that. So it's very exciting to be on your podcast.
I appreciate you saying that. I know it's your second time on the podcast. Thanks again for coming. We ran into each other and I was like, I haven't had Marton in on forever. Let's do a show. And you were like, yes. And it's like so nice and refreshing when people are, like just, yeah, let's do. So, obviously it's been a big week in tech. We just talked about 48-volt architecture with Ray at Infineon. And I know it seems odd to put that into this show, but I have to do a bit of everything, some EV stuff. And now we're going to talk about iPhones and about crazy trifold phones and about some interesting, things that are coming up with Xiaomi and OnePlus. I think this fall is going to be insane, Marton. I think
it already is.
Like it already is, but I think
we're already in it, but like it's all just coming.
Right. But we know what we're in right now. Like Apple, okay, Google did it a little earlier and we're cool with that. Samsung did the foldy thing. But I think that the 8 Gen 4 phones are going to kill us this year because we're going to have to review phones in November and December, which normally does not happen.
Yeah. That'll be a lot. But I prefer the times when we have stuff to talk about to those times where we have to scrape the bottom of the barrel.
No, you're right. There are times when I really have to struggle to find news. So, iPhone 16 series, what are your thoughts?
I have a bit of a weird position because I'm not an iPhone user myself. So I feel like every time it is one of the Apple events, I'm an outsider looking in. And I feel like I don't have the same perspective as somebody would have who's actually using the phones. Because I'm kind of like not evaluating them in the sense that like, oh, is this new feature that they announced, like, would that actually be useful for me personally? But I'm just like there for the entertainment. And in that sense, I feel like the Apple announcements were a little bit boring. Just as an outsider, felt a little bit iterative. I do think a lot of it is like genuinely useful for the people who use the phones, though. Like, just getting a 20% better battery, getting a better camera, 5x telephoto on the non-Pro, 25 watt wireless charging. These are all like actually great quality of life upgrades. It's just to me, because there's nothing that exciting. Of course, I think the two big things are on the iPhone, the Apple Intelligence, and the other is the camera button. These are the two flagship features. Feels a bit weird, especially from Europe, that like I think there's a chance that somebody in Europe will buy the 16 Pro and then they will not get Apple Intelligence before they upgrade to the 17 Pro.
But we saw that also with Google, right? Like, think about it. We got the Pixel without the new version of Android. I feel like this is definitely one of those things that's like history is repeating itself or something.
Yeah, we're getting into the weird times where everything is pre-announced so far in advance. And they're selling you on the idea of a product that you're buying.
And as a popular YouTuber yourself, you do not review devices now on what's happening in a month. And it's unfair for them to ask us to do that too, I feel. Because we're not going to do 2 reviews. Yeah. We are, obviously, with Apple Intelligence, it's going to be a software review, obviously, for some people. But I feel the same as you. I feel like, you were saying you're not an Apple user and you feel like you're looking from the outside in. Same. And I'm a Mac user though, so I have some vested interest, I suppose.
Same, actually.
But the thing that's interesting to me the most is that we have an audience here, like not my audience, not necessarily your audience, but I think the audience that watches the Apple show. I mean, they kind of have Stockholm syndrome. It's kind of like I have that with Pixel, right? Like I'm trapped in the Pixel world because I love.
Are you fully married to the Google stuff?
Well, I am definitely married to the Google stuff, but I'm not married to the Google stuff enough yet that I can't use another Android phone, or even an iPhone with the Google apps. I could do that. That's the nice thing about Google is I think they locked you in, but in a different way than Apple does. I'm locked in on things like the call, the calling features, like the wait for you or whatever they're called. I can't remember. There's a million of them. I don't know if you get them all in Europe, but in the US we have like a beautiful collection of amazing features that make my life, like the recorder, which now a lot of other companies have something like it with transcription and all that. So, and more importantly, I finally have one of those to unbox later today, hopefully, because I just got it yesterday. It's
Pixel Fold.
The Pixel Fold,
Nice.
The second gen, because I have the first gen. And for me, to be honest with you, Martin, like I am going to go to a folding Pixel this year. For the first time, I'm going to a folding phone as my main, because the OnePlus Open really got me into the ecosystem of book style folding phones. Until then, I was sold on the Flip, but never really sold on. I know you've been a long time Z Fold fan, and I was never really sold. Yeah. So I was like, maybe. And then OnePlus Open came out. I was like, oh, yeah, I get it now. This is what it's supposed to be like. Okay, I'll do that. But then I was like, I'm carrying two phones. And now, you're right, though. In your video, you said this is a mid-range specs for, I don't know how much it is in euros.
The chip,
but,
at least,
Yeah. But I don't care because I didn't pay for it. So, whatever.
Yeah.
Like, I think for the audience who's listening, I think, it's a dilemma, because do you want to spend that kind of money? I think, honestly, most people are better served by a 9 Pro XL or 9 Pro. But I think for me, I'm ready. I'm ready to do the plunge because I want to see how durable it'll be too. The OnePlus Open has survived 9 months in my pocket, more than that, since October in my pocket, without breaking, without anything bad happening. So anyway, we're diverging from iPhone, but I think the point I'm making is you're getting it. It's like a lot of iPhone users are trapped, and a lot of iPhone users are trapped and happy, which is fair. Yeah. So from my perspective too, it doesn't seem like a big deal, this Apple event, and I'll put a link to a really good summary the Cult of Mac did. They managed to condense the whole thing into 90 seconds. In a video.
And not just the iPhone, but the entire Apple event. That was like really quite amazing.
And it's actually really good because
you got everything.
I don't always watch the events, but this week I was like, I'll just watch the whole thing. And then now I'm watching the 90 seconds and I'm like, wow, they really condensed it down. So to me, the kind of, let's go through some things, right? Like I think the big changes are, of course, new chips, more battery life, displays maybe a little improved on the Pro, still 60 hertz on the non-Pro, which I don't understand. I don't understand.
And I don't even accept other people apologizing for it. Like this is just like, it makes absolutely no sense.
You know why it makes no sense? Because I finally got one of those to play with.
Yeah.
CMF. Phone 1, which has 120 hertz LTPS.
And it's great.
Display
it's like
that has the same brightness. 2000 nits.
Obviously noticeable, and like the biggest quality of life upgrade that you could get in a phone, I think, among any component.
Ever.
Yeah.
So the way I see this is I feel like Apple, like that really, there's things, some things surprised me. I did not think we were going to get the camera control feature on the non-pros. When I saw, when I finally saw it, I was like, oh, because they showed it very briefly at the beginning of the presentation. Somebody swiping their finger, and I was like, oh, that's for the Pro. And then sure enough, no, they started with the 16 and it was there. The action button on the 16, all that makes sense. The different chips, actually, I'm really impressed with the 16 non-Pro. I think that for most people, this is a really solid phone. They're not charging us more, at least not in the US, $799 for this phone. You're still getting a really good phone all around. The camera system is slightly improved, but mostly you get a nice new chip. So I think overall I'm happy with that. But the Pro's got me really intrigued because not only is it the camera control, which we're gonna definitely spend some time on, but I feel like that bigger ultra wide, that 48 megapixel, now you can do pixel binning. I shoot oftentimes with the ultra wide on my iPhone 15 Pro Max because
do you shoot like product videos, or what do you shoot with the iPhone?
Product videos? Because I need focus close up, and the main sensor doesn't let me do that unless I mean, no matter what, I'm going to have to crop, right? Because if I'm using the ultra wide, I'm going to crop a little bit. But I'd rather crop on a 48 megapixel sensor than crop on 12. All things equal. So I don't know. I actually really wish, in a way, like the old phones, like the 12 I used to have, like I could get really close to that lens. Now, you didn't have the natural depth of field that you have on the night. There's no doubt that for 90% of the people, but for my use case, the way I do my videos, I'd love to have some kind of like main sensor that has the same standard focal length that what you have today, but has the ability to focus up closer without having to switch to macro. But, mostly because I don't use the built-in camera app. I use like Blackview, and I used to use, Filmic. Now I'm on Blackview. And Blackview lets you set the zoom level as a preset. So I've got it set to like, 0.7, 0.8 or something, like closer to 1 than 0.5 or then and so at 12 megapixels, it's a mess. Because I started losing a bit of quality. Of course, I only shoot at 1080p, so it doesn't matter so much. But I feel like that should be an improvement. So we'll see. But also 4K 120. Do you shoot at 4K?
So I never shoot with my phone. I always shoot.
No,
with
of course. But I'm just saying, you shoot at 4K though.
I shoot everything 4K, and I shoot at 4K 120 all the time. With my it's the primary reason why I have the specific camera that I have. I use the GH6, and the two things that I use about it the most are that you can do 4K 120, which really lets you get super slow-mo, super stable shots, and the camera also has great stabilization. So I can do things that look like stabilized gimbal shots just like this. I just hold it there, I just move the camera like this, and it's like you get like 30 seconds of stable, smooth, high quality 4K footage. So like that is amazing if you can get that in a phone. Get good log footage and everything. That's amazing.
You and I could have an entire podcast about it. I appreciate what you're doing, and I think most of my creative friends also on like alphas and other proper cameras. I've always made it a point to shoot all my videos with a mobile device. So I'm not sure I've got the right combo right now. Honestly, I was taken completely aback. I was not expecting when I bought the 15 Pro Max that I couldn't use the main sensor to do the close-ups the way I do them, which is not really
just because of the like minimum focal distance, or like
okay. Because of minimum focal distance. I mean, I appreciate the cameras what they are. I think that for 99% of the people, that's the right setup. But maybe moment lenses, I need to explore. But I think that I'm thinking of trying the 16 Pro non-Max because of the ultra wide being higher res, and maybe that'll solve my problem. But also because of the camera control button for my kind of photography. I mostly shoot landscape.
Are you excited about the camera button?
I normally wasn't going to be like you in one of your recent videos. You're like, you made fun of it. And I made fun of it too initially when I heard the rumors, like you, because I'm like, we've seen you and I've seen this like since the Lumia days, I mean, every Xperia forever now, and so many phones have had camera buttons, and many actually with a double intent, a proper camera type experience. And so I was like, I don't see Apple adding a button. That was my first thing, right? Like I was like, they're removing stuff, so why would they add a button? But now that I've seen how they're doing it, I get it, because I think that's very clever. What I don't understand though, and Michael Fisher talked about this in his interview at Apple in his most recent video of the iPhone there, I don't understand why it actually has a physical clicky thing. Like to me, this is ripe for full haptics, like the trackpad on the Mac, or on the Surface now, on the laptop and stuff. Like, Well, okay, what's your take on it? Because I think it's really genius. I really think the idea of having a capacitive way, it's like having a jog dial without the moving part, which on a phone makes a lot of sense.
So I think it's very hard for me to judge without having tried it extensively, because it looks like something that would definitely confuse somebody who is not deeply into photography. Like, somebody who is not like spending a lot of time thinking about cameras would try this and would like get lost in it. That's my initial impression from the keynote. That said, probably if you have like a workflow and you learn to use it and you're using it frequently and you have like an understanding of the technology, then I think it's probably going to be useful. I do think that it's clever. I do think that every Android brand will copy it. We've already seen rumors that I think Oppo and who else? I think Xiaomi. No, Nubia.
Yeah,
Oppo and Nubia, right?
But Oppo, apparently the X8, the flagship coming up with the 8 Gen 4, is supposed to have something similar.
Yeah, and I read something about a Nubia as well that will have it too. So like, like this like with almost everything else that Apple does, this is going to come to all the Android flagships as well, and we're going to have it and we're going to use it. Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think it's fine. I think you could have done. I feel like the smartphone already has such a good camera app and such a good camera UI because you have the whole touchscreen and you can just like add all the controls over it. I'm not entirely convinced that you need to have a camera button for scrolling around stuff, but I'd love to try it.
That's my thing. Like, you said the word clever, and I think that's actually a very clever word to use for that. But clever is exactly why my engineering self is like, wow, this is cool. But why do you actually still have a clicky button in there? Anyway, that's me. But I don't see the use at all for iPhone users. Like, I see the use for pro users who are a very small subset ultimately.
Exactly.
And the social media people are not going to use it because
so why is it on the regular? Why is it on the non-pro regular?
Like, why is it on the regular, and why is it where it is? Because vertical content is the way most people create content on iPhones. Like we are the exception. Like we are the YouTube creators that we're the old school.
We're the dinosaurs. And
also anyone who shoots stills is not, in my opinion, is not shooting with an iPhone. If you're using a mobile device and you're into still photography, you're using a Pixel, you're using a Xiaomi 14 Ultra, you're using an Oppo Find X7 Ultra, you're using a Vivo X100 Ultra, you're not using, I don't think you should be using an iPhone. I don't like the stills coming out of the iPhone.
I think plenty of people do, though. I think a lot of the creators do.
No, they're fine. You're right. They're really good. But I think that this is like there's some kind of anachronisms and fit issues here in terms of demographics but I'm not going to question it because I'm a nerd. So I'm like, oh, cool, clever engineering here. And I want to try it out because I do like stills.
So I just say, I think the non-pro should have 120 hertz and no camera button. This is the trade-off that I would have made as a product manager. I think it would have made a lot more sense.
And you worked as a product manager for Oppo, right? So you would know.
Not a product manager, but I worked for Oppo, yes.
Yes. So my point is that I think you're right. I think this is a bit of a mystery to me. I'm excited to try it out.
Oh yeah,
I'm excited with the 4K 120 update, all that stuff. I think Apple is there's nothing surprising in the very incremental way the iPhone's evolving here.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I think for some creators that I know, this is going to be a big difference, especially the ultra wide, especially if this interface, the camera control ends up being as good as our trackpad's Force Touch is, or whatever they call it, the haptic touch or whatever, which still blows my mind today. I still have my original MacBook, the 12-inch Retina. That was my battle machine on the ground for years, and I know it's crazy because it's underpowered, but I still want Apple to make an M chip machine like that. I don't care about the ports. I live fine with one. You just put one on each side, maybe, just go nuts. Don't remove the headphone jack, please. But anyway, the point is, I want Apple to make that form factor with an M3 chip or M4 or whatever badly. And so I every now and then I pull it out, I charge it up. and I make sure it still works because I love it and I want to keep it kind of as a museum piece because I have a cube and I have a titanium PowerBook. I have a bunch of stuff, and I'm like, this trackpad, it's 7 years, no, more than that now, almost 9 years old, right? 2015. And like, wow, like I'm surprised how few PCs still have that. Like Microsoft does, I think maybe Asus and some of the Lenovo maybe, but like, why not? Like how it is not everybody gone to that. Yeah. So this thing is going to be, I think, pretty good, this camera control. I feel like I have a good feeling about it. But really, that's it. That's the iPhone, folks. That's it. Like, there's not like the titanium. The colors are so boring, Martin.
I heard a lot of people who were very excited about the colors, but I don't know. I mostly just get my phones in black, so I'm the problem.
I tend to like the lighter colors, but when you see what the regular 16 color choices are, last year they were so desaturated and kind of like, I just like a good color. And I have to say, if I had to rock any phone without a case, it would probably be the iPhone. And because they're so rugged, like they're so good at falling and not breaking. I mean, the glass isn't a thing. That's still an issue. But I've seen so many people that have handled an iPhone for a whole year and have it's all scuffed up. It's all marked up, but the glass is intact on both sides. And it is really durable. And I think the new Pixels are going to be like that too. And Samsung's done that for years as well. But like, as a Pixel Stockholm Syndrome person, the past Pixels weren't quite there in terms of, I felt at least in terms of that like build quality and stuff. So I would like to
want the colors.
I want the colors though. I'm going to get a Pro, give me like a purple Pro or something. Oh, the color, even the product red, they were cool.
Every phone I have is in a thick case,
and
I don't see the color,
right? Like
so I just buy black.
Right now, I have my my iPhones here actually recording some backup audio, and then I still haven't switched over to the 9 Pro XL because what was the point when I was going to switch over to the Fold? I still have my 8 Pro here, and my 8 Pro is in a case, and then the only thing on my desk that's not in a case, by the way, I've got one now. It's the Honor Magic V3. This thing is, just for the Patreons who are watching, like this thing is thin, very thin.
Such an amazing device.
The hardware is unbelievable. The software, but actually, I'm not as upset with the software as I thought it would be. The last time I used an Honor phone was the last time was a Magic 5 Pro, I think, so a year and a bit ago. And I was kind of, it's still very Huawei 2018 though, right?
Yeah.
So
which wasn't super good even back then. So,
no. Yeah. So I think, look, ultimately, I think the iPhones are there, and I am interested. I'm intrigued. Camera control intrigues me. It's also very weird to me, you tell me what you think, that they don't have the double detent implemented from day one. They said they were going to implement that on the iPhone, but it's not at launch.
Oh.
On the camera control. Yeah. So like
that's the weirdest
well, so if you watch a video with Michael, he brings that up in the interview with the product people, like why? And they're like, well, we want to make sure it's right. I'm like, that should be the first feature. Make sure
before you launch the product.
Like that should be the first feature you should have worked on. Like the default behavior for that button should be a double detent camera button.
Yeah.
And then on top of that, you would have given it like the scrolly stuff and all the other things you showed us. Because
that is very odd indeed.
Right. Because here again, right, Martin, my thought is because of the position and the landscape kind of like focus of this feature, you're not doing this for the average user.
Yeah.
This feature is for the pros, which is also to your point why it really shouldn't be on the regular iPhone, even though I'm happy that it is. But it's like that feature should, like, I have very mixed messages here, Apple. Very mixed messages. You're not making any sense.
Yeah, indeed.
I don't know. Are you getting one?
Much more.
You're not getting one.
No, I'm not getting one. Much more exciting, I think, is the AirPods with the hearing aid. That is
exactly. So
that is an actual feature that I think is exciting and will be impactful for a lot of people.
100%. So what are your thoughts beyond just the initial, like, when I heard that, I wasn't surprised because they have kind of have had a feature in the AirPods Pro 2 for a while now. But, you know, I have a lot of thoughts because I used to work in audio research, like audiology specifically, hearing research. But I want to hear what your thoughts are in terms of, like, I don't know how it is in Europe with hearing aid. The industry here is a scam, and it is very much a gatekeeping, you know, very terrible thing. And I don't want to generalize. There are some wonderful people in that industry that do a good job. It's very important that we have audiologists, that we have clinical devices. I get that. But I'm talking about the hearing aid manufacturer, gatekeeping industry. I'm not talking about the actual, you know, hearing tests are legit and they should be done right. And the fact that, like, to me, the fact that you can do that on an iPhone now, and, you know, this is not surprising. You've been able to do this on a phone for a decade at least, because the audio quality on devices have gotten so good. And we've seen, like, non-clinical versions of this, like with earbuds, where you test your hearing and it gives you an EQ curve that matches what, you know, it thinks is your best EQ curve. Like, you know, BBK Group's done that forever on their earbuds. And to me, as soon as I saw that, I was like, it's only a matter of time till earbuds become hearing aids. But in the US, we had a big step here where the government approved what they call over-the-counter, non-prescription hearing aids 2 years ago, I think it was. And now, earbuds. And I've always said this. I was like, earbuds will be hearing aids one day. Now, you know, technically, I can hear already all the audiologists in the world saying, but wait. And I'm like, yes, the battery life. It's not going to last you all day. That's an issue. Like, there's no doubt that hearing aids, if they have one advantage, is that they last for a day or two or more. And I have tested hearing aids because you know, as an ex-hearing research person, I've had the chance, but I've actually tested the most modern hearing aid last year, and I didn't even review it because it sucked so bad. It was like thousands of dollars of technology that I thought could be replicated with the average less than, like, over 100, less than 200 earbud. And other than the battery life,
probably other than the certification and everything, I don't think there's anything special about these devices. They're like microphones, speakers.
They use balanced armature drivers that are very precise, that are probably more precise than what's in the earbuds, although some earbuds now have armature drivers too. So balanced armature, which is expensive and very delicate and all that, and does certainly do a better result in terms of, you know, accuracy in terms of stuff. But I think it's the DSP is what's, you know, it's a software driven experience now. You know, it used to be hearing aids were limited by their hardware, and now, you know, they still are in terms of battery life, but they're limited now mostly by the kind of processing you can do on them. If anybody's leading the charge in DSP right now, it's the personal audio industry, right? And Apple is amongst the Chinese at the forefront of this, right? So, like, I'm super excited about this. I think this is a democratization of these things. So the clinical test on the phone is a big deal, and the fact that they're certifying them is also a big deal. Now, the drawback, of course, is you're not going to be able to do that all day. You're going to have to use them sparingly, otherwise your battery life's going to die. But
yeah, I mean, and I understand. Like, I don't think this will be like a replacement for regular hearing aids. But for example, like, I'm thinking about my own grandpa who uses hearing aids. He's the only person that I like know well enough to be able to understand what their usage is like. And for him, going to the doctor to get it fitted and to get the test done, and then like whenever something is wrong with the device, he has to go to the doctor, and then he like doesn't use it for like a month because he doesn't get an appointment. And like when he goes to have the appointment, he like forgets to charge it, and it's like a very not very user friendly experience. And so like he ends up not using it less than half of the time anyway, and including on weeks on end, because he just can't figure it out and can't be bothered, and it's too much of a hassle and whatever. And so I think, like, even just for the user experience of like this being a product that you can go into the store, you can buy it, your own grandson can come to your house and then just be like, sit down, we put this in your ear, we do like boop boop boop, and then here's where you plug it in, here's how you troubleshoot it. You can only use it for, I don't know, 4 hours at a time, but like at least when you want to go out and do something, you can use it. And I think that would already be like a massive change for him.
And the ease of charge with the wireless charging and all that other stuff, which, by the way, some hearing aids have now. But I'm just saying, like the best hearing aids, the ones I test, I'm not going to say names, but you can probably figure it out if you work in audiology. Like, they're really nice. They have Bluetooth, they have, wireless charging, they last forever on a charger, microscopic. You can barely tell anybody's wearing them. Really, I mean, I have to say, like, the hardware has improved drastically, but it's the software. Like, I still felt the quality, like, as a non-hearing impaired person, it's hard for me to tell. But I was able to simulate some hearing impairment curves, some basic ones. And, your ear will adapt as a non-impaired person. Your ears will adapt to a new curve pretty quickly. And so after an hour or so, you kind of get used to it, the amplification, certain bands and stuff. But I was like, the sound quality wasn't quite there. And I'm like, how is it that is thousands and thousands of dollars? And then Bluetooth was sucky. Like, it was just so bad. I'm like, what's the point? Like, your use case is exactly what I'm talking about. Like, a lot of people who have hearing aids don't need to wear them all day at all. Like, a lot of them are people that are older and they only really need them when they interact with the world. And then 4 hours is plenty. They go out, they do their shopping, they do whatever. They go, hang out with their friends. Maybe they do, if they do a video call, they're going to be wearing earbuds anyway, right? Like, what I'm saying? So I think that I'm very excited about this. I think this is a huge step forward. And I really hope that we see clinical approval on other brands. Like, I hope that maybe Samsung can get something because they're so big in the US.
Right.
And hopefully maybe Pixel, because the Chinese, obviously, I don't think they're going to get these approvals, at least for this country, for North America.
Sony already is working on something, right? So that makes a lot of sense. And like, I would be surprised if Samsung didn't get on it, because obviously they will, because if this is possible and it's a feature that they can add, they're all doing it.
Plus Apple did it, so now we have to do it, right?
We all have to do it. But this is a good thing. This is where everyone should copy each other, and we should all,
Absolutely. This is like, to me, this is like, again, like I started my career as an engineer in college, working in a lab that did hearing research on children. We had good data. This is the early 90s. We had good data on how adults perceive audio. Like, that's how Fraunhofer was able to create MP3 or the whole MPEG standards of audio compression, because we had a good understanding how an adult human heard audio. So we could figure out where we could throw stuff out and which bands, etc. We understood, like, hearing threshold curves and all that stuff. But with children, we had no idea. Like, it's really hard to detect if a child has a hearing impairment at 3 years old or 4 years old, right? Because they don't talk yet. They're just, it's not very clear. And, you might be able to get their attention, but are you able to get their attention such that, like, it's a full hearing or not? You don't know. So we were trying this lab I worked with. I was just a minion writing code, but the researchers I was working with were trying to establish what these curves looked like at different ages. Now we have it, but back then we didn't. And the only way to measure that, to do those hearing tests that you do with adults, where they go like, can you hear the tone on your left ear or your right ear? A louder tone, quieter tone, etc. I made video games that the kids would play, and depending on how they would react to the game, we know that they heard the sound or not, right? And so that's how my video game career started, because I made video games for hearing research for children. And of course, I had to understand audiology. And this is 92, 93. I know I'm old, but these were DOS computers. Like, I had a $2,000 sound card in there, like not a sound blaster. I'm talking about like a proper, studio grade, high end, and I had to do like all kinds of fancy, assembly coding to get the data to transfer over the ISA bus to the card and do double buffering so they would continuously play audio, and anyway. And that's how I got started. And because I got so low to the hardware and the metal early on, I was able to work on consoles because I understood it was really intuitive for me to understand how the hardware did its thing. And then I became a stupid tech journalist,
And then we got the AirPods.
And then we got the AirPods with clinical support. Look, I think this is fantastic, and
no,
you
absolutely.
feel it too. And
absolutely,
did you think it's going to come to Europe? Like, obviously, you guys are ready for the not dealing with the scam that is hearing aid companies.
So I actually don't know what the situation here is. I know that my grandpa, because we're socialists here in Europe, he got his hearing aid for free from the healthcare system. So like he didn't buy it. So I don't know if they're also overcharging. I'm sure they're also overcharging they're just overcharging somebody else in the system.
But they're mostly covered here if you have some kind of healthcare. It's not too hard to get it covered, but it's just they're so expensive for what they do. That's my problem with the scam. It's like it shouldn't have to be this complicated. And there's a certain tier of people who can't afford healthcare here, unfortunately, because it's not socialism, that right now would benefit because they could have probably save up and afford buying a $200 pair of earbuds, right?
Yeah. So I think this is gonna be. I mean, if it works, I find it very difficult that it wouldn't be rolling out in the next couple of years, pretty much everywhere.
I am sure it's going to work. I am absolutely certain it's going to work. Other quick announcements from Apple. There was watches. Nothing too exciting there. You get a new color for the Ultra. You got it's the Marquez edition, matte black or something, satin black. There is, of course, interestingly, a Series 10 watch which now has a bigger display in its large size than the Ultra, and so I can feel the tech bros already losing their minds because it feels really butch to wear the Ultra watch. Like I'm wearing a Pixel watch, by the way, a 45 millimeter now. I've switched. You've probably seen me go through a lot of watches in the last few weeks if you're watching this on Patreon, but I really like this one.
That's the 45 you said, right?
Yeah, the 45 fits me because I had the original Pixel watch and it was too small on my wrist.
A bit too small, yeah.
I went back to Samsung for a while, which I really like their watches, and then I have the Ultra here, which I wore for a while. But my watch of the year up to the Pixel was the OnePlus Watch 2. Really great watch. Really like it. But this, I think, I'm a little worried about durability because my first one, I scratched the screen very early on, and because it's just glass. Like, whereas you need some kind of metal bezel to protect the glass, I think. But that's just me, because I'm always rubbing against some concrete or something.
I think it makes a lot of sense that that's why every other watch has it. I still don't understand.
It looks good though.
It's pretty.
It looks good.
It's pretty, but
it's pretty. But functionality-wise, this right now, like especially as a Pixel user, is like. The integration. I used to be angry about Fitbit because they bought Pebble, remember? Like I have an axe to grind, right? But
I loved Pebble. I was such a big Pebble fan.
I know. Yeah. But having worked there, I had a bit of an axe to grind with Fitbit. Yeah. And then Fitbit, this whole when the early days when they did the original Pixel Watch, the integration was so poor between the Fitbit side and the Google Fit and the actual Google Pixel side. And wow, 2 years forward, and wow, now it's so slick, so seamless, so beautifully done. Kudos to Google, but you should have done that on day one. And maybe you have less of an axe to grind now with Fitbit. But anyway, all this to say, the new watches are not very impressive. I think it's titanium instead of stainless steel, which makes sense, blah, blah, blah. But look, another thing, another scam in the healthcare world is sleep apnea, right? Like I think it's real, it exists. People suffer from it. They need remedies. There's no doubt about that. Same with hearing loss. But the entire industry overcharging, people and insurance companies with these machines that are terrible experiences at best.
You mean the things that go on your face?
Yeah. They're like the face hugger, like the alien thing. Like
I don't know anything about it. Do those not work? Or
it does, but it's very uncomfortable, and a lot of people. A lot of it is placebo too. The industry, at least here in North America, is almost anyone that has any kind of sleep problem, like if you don't sleep well, immediately they send you to a sleep doctor, and the sleep doctor immediately prescribes a CPAP machine that costs thousands of dollars or hundreds of dollars, and it sucks to use, and it's terrible experience, and it's expensive, and it requires maintenance, and there's distilled water involved. Like, oh man, like somebody needs to disrupt that so bad. Right. But having a watch now, and this is what I'm excited about, having a watch, like Samsung did it with the Ultra already, and I think the new watch.
Are those approved? Because I know that they're still in the limbo.
I don't think Samsung's fully FDA approved, but I think Apple's getting there, and having the equipment that the doctors prescribe to test for apnea are these. You have to wear this thing on your chest. It's like a big box and it's got wires and tubes and you're not going to sleep well. You're going to be uncomfortable. So and you have to do this for a week and then return the equipment and the data is on the equipment and they download it and they decide, oh yes, and 90% of the time, no matter what the data says, oh yes, you have sleep apnea. Now we're going to get you a machine, right? It's BS. We want to be able to go to the doctor and say, this is what we're seeing. These are the measurements of a proper FDA-approved device that's non-intrusive, that lets you actually sleep properly for a week and gives you some data. Because then we'll know how bad it is. And then maybe then we can make decisions. But at least we know. And right now we don't really know. Is there more going on than just sleep apnea? We don't know. And
so I have a harder time judging whether the sleep apnea detection will work well or not than the hearing aids. I feel like the hearing aids seems very obvious to me that it will work. Yeah. I hope that the sleep apnea detection works. I can't really say. But these two things were the things that actually seemed like the biggest innovations and the most meaningful updates from the Apple event to me. Like that will actually be big deals for people.
100%. Yeah, I mean, ultimately, people are going to win because if FDA approves it, FDA is generally pretty good at not approving stuff that's, crap. So well, I have high hopes that at least we can measure it better. We can give a better, like when a doctor just is they're trying to make money by selling you a machine, ultimately. And now you'll be able to say, hold up, I got some data. And they're going to say, well, I don't want to use that. And you're going to say, yeah, you are, because it's FDA approved and you can use that. And if you don't use it, I'm going to see another doctor. That's going to agree with me using this device to detect my sleep apnea because it's officially approved. And eventually more and more people are going to want to do that. I think we'll see. You're right. It's not as a big deal, but it's interesting because I feel like Apple doing it's probably a bigger step than, Samsung doing it.
Yeah, just for the scale and
yeah, exactly.
The doctors are going to have so many Apple Watch customers coming in and saying, I have this. Like, they're going to have to deal with this whether they want to or not.
All right, let's talk about the big elephant in the room, the big Chinese elephant in the room. Because
the tri-folding elephant.
Wow. So cool.
Are you in love?
Look, I'm in love about two things. I'm in love about the idea and the fact that it's not an idea anymore, that it's real. I'm also in love with the fact that Huawei is just giving everybody else the finger as always and saying, we're still boss, okay? Because they really are. Like,
yeah, this product and this announcement in particular was definitely that. Like, timing it right after the iPhone event was just literally that.
And I have decided now with certainty, after many years of trying to be a reasonable human and giving them the benefit of the doubt, that Honor is still 100% Huawei. So what I'm really excited about is when this makes it into the Honor stable in Gen 2 or something as a Snapdragon-equipped, GMS-equipped phone that maybe costs $2,300 instead of $2,800. And has an Honor stamp on the back. That's kind of where I think we're headed. And, there's rumors actually already this week of this phone coming to the West. Of course, without GMS and with the Kirin 9010, it's the same problem as the Pixel Fold, the mid-range chip thing,
except even more, because it's also $2,800.
Right. But my point is, I don't game, so really, as long as it's fluid and does its thing,
Yeah.
But like, I just last night, before I went to bed really late, Ben Sin published his hands-on, and I added it to our email thread. Right, like I'll put it in the show notes. Oh my God. What do you think? Like, isn't this, like, I feel like we're living in, Westworld, like it's happening. I mean, it's probably not a good thing, but that's not a good example. But I'm just saying, like,
hello, it's the robot revolution and we all die.
The tech world is happening from that world.
I mean, the amazing thing is that, like, they claim that it's 12.8 millimeters thick when folded completely, which means it is technically right between the thickness of a Fold 5 and a Fold 6 from Samsung. So that's
incredible.
That is incredible. They managed to get one more fold in there without making the device thicker than the Samsung devices. I mean, is insane. I don't think it is that practical. I think from like the way it looks, like I would really not want to have like a folding screen on the outside.
Let's not worry about practical. We're worried about one thing. It exists. It's real.
It exists, and it is very cool. Absolutely, no doubt about it.
At this point, I'm like, if I had the budget, I would buy one. But I know it's going to be obsolete in no time. I know it's going to break because of that exposed hinge outside, display part.
That's the only part that is telling me that if somehow we could avoid that.
I mean, if you've ever, I actually had I had an Oppo Find N2 Flip, a review unit that broke like that, where I had put it in my pocket. I closed it as I put it in my pocket, and it closed on top of my mask, like just and the mask, has that little nose piece that's
the
metal.
Little metal wire.
And the little metal thing had kind of protruded out of the fabric, and it poked the screen as it closed on it, and display was borked. So they sent me a replacement. But I that's when I realized that if I ever drop a folding or flip phone down, inner display onto gravel or something,
it's gone. Yeah,
it's gone. And so now this is an edge that's constantly protruding, ripe to be hit on something.
Yeah,
and
it's and I think I read today that the screen replacement is $1,100, which is
I saw that.
Okay. Well,
but you can subscribe to and this is I think what's going to happen, right? You can subscribe to like Apple Care, so Huawei Care or whatever. Yeah. No, look. I think
we don't. It doesn't have to be practical. It's just amazing, and I completely agree with that.
Alternatively, I would like to argue that for any kind of trifold like that, where there's going to be an element of the screen that's always exposed, of the folding screen that's always exposed, I think we're going to need some sort of warranty, like some sort of plan, a lot. And in North America, it's not nobody's going to buy this here because they barely buy the folding phones anyway. So I think in Asia though, I think having a plan where you can buy Huawei Care Plus or whatever, and you get, you pay $300 up front and you get essentially insurance.
That just spreads out the cost of a screen replacement.
No. It does. But I'm just saying it's nice to have that option. And I think that's how, as this technology evolves, as we find different ways of making trifolds, that's a good kind of intermediate step to guarantee that but people are just going to have to be gentle, right? That's, to me, what's really exciting is that you get a 10-inch, almost, 10 by 16.
Yeah.
And now when I hate watching videos on my Open because, you get black bars, so much black bars, it's barely bigger than using a regular phone when you watch video. It's really great for productivity stuff. But as soon as you watch video, you're like, what's the point of this again? Now with that thing, watching videos is as you said, it's like having an iPad. And wow. And whatever it is, 2 millimeters.
3.6. Yeah.
What? How? Yeah. I see this Honor here and I'm like, how did they make this phone? This phone alone blows me away.
Yeah, that's 4.4.
Look, the port is the same thickness as the phone.
Yeah. That's really quite amazing. I also really like Huawei already did this in one of their earlier, I think the Mate X2 fold or whatever, where it's kind of a wedge shape. So you have a thicker part and then it kind of tapers down to a thinner part at the end. And you kind of hold it at the thick part. So the weight distribution is a little bit better. And
you can put the cameras and the USB port in that side.
Camera, the USB port, the speakers and whatever in the thick part. And then the thin part kind of just levels out to just a screen, basically. It makes so much sense as well. And it's such a perfect way of designing for this triple fold as well. That as you go further and further out, it gets thinner and thinner. I really like that.
I just love that Huawei's hold my beer. We're going to show the rest of the world how to make things. It's just, they're the masters. I'm sorry. Look, I hate to say this because it's such a cliche, but they have not lost their touch. Their brand has done nothing other than the chip limitation for them. And even I would argue because Honor is the same company, as we've now pretty much proven. Because if you look at the camera pod on this phone, don't tell me it doesn't look almost exactly like the camera pod on the Huawei Mate XT Ultimate, whatever, right? It's like, come on. So now that we've proven that they're the same company still, I can only hope that a trifold comes to Honor in the next 2-3 years. And Tecno's working on one. So,
yeah,
they're doing some good stuff. So hopefully we'll get some options. I'm just interested in exploring that. Will I make it my main phone? Hell no. I'm barely even confident that the Pixel Pro 9 Fold is going to be my... I'm hoping that, basically, I'm going to go for it this year, making my main phone.
Join the dark side. Come
I'm
to the foldable
go for
camp.
it and hope it doesn't break. That's basically what I have a Pixel.
I've had a foldable phone since the Fold 2, and I've never had one break. At least not the foldable part.
The Open has been very, very, very good for me. So I'm hoping this lasts, and then I will be okay. And maybe I will never go back after that. Yeah, I have so many mixed feelings because ultimately I do not use the inner screen of my Open that often. Actually, when I do though, do I ever? Then it's really great. Like if I'm writing or needing multiple things side by side, I find that it liberates me a little bit. I find
what's your ratio? What's your inner outer ratio?
On the Open, well, it evolved over time, but I would say that on the Open, I'm probably about 1/3. 2/3 or 1/4, 3/4. Like I'm still very much on the outer screen a lot more. Okay. But the inner screen for me has been liberating when I'm on an airplane or something where I can't spread out because I'm a big person and I get upgraded a lot because I fly a lot, I have status. So I get free upgrades to more comfortable seats where I can spread out and use my Mac. And I'm not much of a tablet person, so the OnePlus Tab or Pad, whatever 2 that I have right now is really nice, and it does solve the problem of being able to work on a smaller surface. But ultimately, I want to hold something in my hand with more screen real estate and work on it. And I find that these folding phones, the ones we have today, are the solution. Like I've written parts of reviews on a plane stuck in economy where I couldn't spread my elbows on a folding phone, and it felt less tiring and less cramped and less annoying than doing it on a regular slab phone. Some people are gonna say that's what iPads are for, and I'm gonna be but I'm not.
I don't want an extra device just for that.
I would do the tablet thing if it was a trifold. Yeah. Maybe then. But look, ultimately it's super exciting. And I think that it shows, it's almost kind of a prototype being sold in a way, right? Because it's like the original Fold, from Samsung,
sure,
is going to be a little iffy. But here's the thing. Next year we'll have Gen 2, and maybe it'll come to Honor. And then Tecno's going to do one, and then we're going to have more. And then maybe, 3 years from now when we're another podcast together, we'll have choices. And I think
I'm pretty sure that Samsung is going to have one in like a year and a half.
Well, now they have to, right? Now they're but what I'm really happy about is it just shows how Huawei is just like, you guys, we still own you all. It's like, and I've always thought that about Huawei. Like if I this week with this announcement, I've been playing that game in my head of what if Huawei had come to the US at that CES where they got, blocked by the US FCC. It was, I think, that said AT&T can't get this phone. It was, I think, I want to say it was the Mate 10 Pro or something at the time. And I'm like, what if that had happened? What if they had come in? Yeah. Like, where would we be today? It would be very different. I think
they'd be the biggest phone company in the world. If
100%.
If they had been allowed to go to the US and didn't get all the sanctions, I think they would be on top of the world.
I mean, they were well on their way. I still have a P40 Pro Plus, and every now and then I dust it off and fire it up and update everything on it. And what a phone! Still today, I can't believe it's 4 years old now, and it's still. Wow, what a solid phone today. It still feels fast. The camera is still incredible. Yeah, I don't know. Maybe I'm just a shill for the Chinese communist.
For socialism, regime. As we've learned.
Socialism. I'm a European, of course. I was born and raised in socialism, God damn it. So, yeah. All right, so there's a couple more things I want to just briefly touch on. Number one is Xiaomi's 14T series is leaking left, right, and center and is coming soon, September 26th. I have reviewed every T phone. Somehow I don't review the main ones, like the earlier in the year flagship, but I always end up reviewing the T for some reason, usually for Geekspin. So go to geekspin.com, type my name in there, and check out all my history of T reviews. So yeah, and then we've got strong rumors that OnePlus 13, and it's not just the 13. It's everything having an 8 Gen 4 is going to come out in October.
In fact, I think the OnePlus guys have even confirmed it. So
yeah, that's right. So they did confirm it. That's why I put it in the show notes. But the point I'm making is that I'm going to the Qualcomm Summit in Hawaii like every year, and where they announce the chip. And I wouldn't be surprised that the time from chip announcement to release was very compressed last year.
What is it this year?
It's been shifting.
It's earlier, right?
Late. It's earlier. Yeah, it's like mid-October or something that I'm going out there. So yeah, I think it's like, I want to say it's around the 20th or something. Can't remember. I have to look at my calendar. But the point is, we're going to get these chips, and then we're going to immediately get a whole bunch of flagship phones, including the 13.
We already know that the OnePlus and Xiaomi and whatever, they're like coming in late October, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Yeah.
So last year
pretty much
was
chip, and then
last year was late October. This year it's a little more mid-ish October that the chip's coming. So then we're going to get phones like immediately after that. But remember, this could just be China only. So we might still not get the OnePlus 13 until January in the West. But at the same time, why not? Maybe they will come out with it and say, here, you can have it for Black Friday.
I mean,
that would really mess up our review plans, right?
Honestly, if they're releasing the chip in October, I would be surprised if the idea was not to have something done before the holidays. Because that's the biggest sales season. So why would you not want to hit that?
I think it'll be interesting to see how that develops this year, because then we have MediaTek with their conference right after that in November. And as you know, a lot of the Vivo phones and stuff use the MediaTek flagship chip as well. So I think this is going to be the Techtober, September, October tech, whatever you want to call it, to kill all previous. We're just going to be, we're going to get through the holidays. Yeah, this is it. This is the hill we all die on right now.
Just implode and turn into a black hole, and we all get sucked into it.
Exactly. Yeah. So that's basically what we got for you this week, folks. Stay tuned. Obviously, I have a bunch of phones to unbox. I'm really looking forward to finally having the CMF Phone 1, because I wasn't in the early release of the devices, and I've been really wanting to play with that phone. I've got all the accessories here too. They sent me everything, like the lanyard and the kickstand and the different colored cases. For those of you on Patreon, I'm just showing everything to everyone. It's pretty cool. Well, listen, we should wrap up. So, Martin, where can people find your stuff? You have 2 YouTube channels and a whole bunch of social media stuff. So tell us.
That's right. On YouTube, I do Tech Altar and the Friday Checkout. Tech Altar, I do basically 1 video a month, bigger, more analytical pieces, and the Friday Checkout is a weekly show. And then I'm mostly active on Mastodon, Blue Sky, Threads, all the Twitter alternatives.
What is your handle? Is it unified across all the platforms?
Yeah, at Tech Altar on all the
things. Folks, I just cannot stress how you should subscribe to these 2 YouTube channels. I get my news from Martin on a regular basis because it's research for the podcast. And it's since I, publish generally on the weekend. And then also, I love your analysis videos as well. They're really great. So, you guys should subscribe to all the channels, and you can discuss things with us on social media. You know where to find me, folks. I'm at Tankgirl. That's TNKGRL, like the comic book Drop the Vowels, on all the platforms. I'm still on the evil Twitter thing, mostly because I still have some interesting conversations. I've managed to stay away from all the controversial crap, but I don't like it there anymore. So hit us up on...
My mental health is so much better since I left Twitter.
I
feel like it's genuinely great.
100%. Hit us up on Threads. That's where I'm most active. On Blue Sky as well. I'm not on Mastodon because I tried it and it was a little too scattered for me. A little too, not I get it from but it's just I don't see how my audience is going to get into it. So I was like, let's pick my battles here. So yeah, chat with us about this show. And, there's a bunch of other stuff. The podcast, of course, lives at mobiletechpodcast.com. We're on all the big platforms. Please subscribe and tell your friends. The YouTube channel, I'm not super active. Check out my channel, youtube.com/mobiletechpodcast. And you know how YouTube works. So like, subscribe, tell your friends, click the bell, comment about this podcast, whatever you want to. But the best thing you can do if you have the bandwidth, if you have the time and the money, is to subscribe to my Patreon, patreon.com/TNKGRL. Because there's a video version of the show now. It's $5 a month. It's weekly. You get it in advance, a day or so before the audio version. And you get to see our faces and me brandishing devices and whatever else. Sometimes I've done live unboxings. There's bloopers. We go over time, and I'll publish some extra content because it doesn't fit in the public audio version, whatever. So you get bonus stuff. Join it if you can. Support me if you can. I'd appreciate patreon.com/tankerl. That's patreon.com/TNKGRL. If you don't like Patreon, that's cool. There's a PayPal button in the show notes. You can click on that, make a one-time donation, support me that way. So thanks, Martin, for being my guest yet again. That was awesome.
Thanks for having me.
And I want to thank our sponsor, Infineon. Infineon is a global semiconductor leader in automotive, power systems, and IoT, and is committed to driving decarbonization and digitalization together with its ecosystem partners. And that's it, folks, for the show. Thanks again, Martin, and we'll have you on at some point in the future, and maybe the next time a trifold comes along, because you and I think could
that would be exciting.
Nerd out about that for a while.
That is my
job.
Yeah,
stay tuned. We'll have another show next week. And until then, cheers, everybody.
Bye.